What's going on, everyone, and welcome to Wheel of Time Diary number, what is this, number 13? Is that correct? It feels like it should be episode 12, not 13, but regardless, we're doing what would have been the last episode covering the Dragon Reborn, if not for the fact that I finished the book like an entire week and a half early. And so last week's diary covered the end of the book, and might I say that diary was a disaster. It was like 35 minutes trying to cover like 20 chapters worth of content. Yeah, that was not good. Either way, this week we're doing something a little bit different because since I don't have anything else planned and I wasn't going to, move a whole bunch of videos around again to make up for the change, because I already had to move a bunch of videos around because of stuff that was happening in like July and August and stuff, and I don't want to do that again. So this time around, I'm just kind of changing what I'm doing. I only changed a couple videos around. I was initially going to do this video at some point next month and have it a normal book binge episode, but then I decided, you know what, maybe it's better to just kind of do as a sort of bonus episode to the Wheel of Time Diaries. This week we are covering what is essentially what seems like is the first major arc of the Wheel of Time, with oh man, 3 thick books is hard to handle sometimes. The Eye of the World, The Great Hunt, and The Dragon Reborn. Of course, this is not a trilogy by, the actual definition of the word, because the series is 14 books plus a short prequel, so 15 books. 3 books within it is not a trilogy, but the arc within it is sometimes considered the first trilogy of the series, at least according to how some people put it. So today we're going to talk about all 3 of these books. Altogether, I spent quite a bit of time reading. I suppose I'm going to go into, sort of a similar format of doing this as I did for all the normal diaries, just because I can. Eye of the World, I spent about 33 hours reading. The Great Hunt, I spent about 28 and a half hours reading, and The Dragon Reborn, I spent about 24 and a half hours reading. So you add that all together and you get like 74 plus 8. You get like 82, 83. Yeah, so you get basically about 83 or so hours. No, that's a lot. You get 86. Somewhere around 86 hours of reading time between these 3 books, so not an insignificant amount of content. If my mental math there is incorrect, I apologize for that. I was just trying to do it as quickly as possible, and it didn't turn out being quick. Regardless, I've enjoyed my time with this series quite greatly. I've said this multiple times, but I'm going to go ahead and go into like a brief overview of everything that I experienced for the series in terms of the impressions. Eye of the World I went to at first in May, and went into expecting a 3-star read, maybe a 4-star read, so that if it turned out only being 3 stars or was, just fine but not amazing, I would still be okay to continue the rest of the series. I wouldn't be, too bummed about it, because that's what I was expecting going into it. And I came out having had a thoroughly good time. There was one chapter in this book that was structured and organized really strangely for no apparent reason, and was told by many other people at the time that, yeah, that chapter is kind of a weird chapter and there doesn't seem to be a reason for it. So it's not like one of those things that's just like, oh yeah, that's important later. No, it was just kind of weird. But outside of that one chapter and the ending, I agree with the ending being a little bit rushed and being a little bit confusing, but beyond those 2 rather minor criticisms, I didn't really have much that I disliked about Eye of the World, and for that reason alone, I was like, okay, well, this is definitely 4-star, but I'm going to rate it 4.5 star and round that up to 5. And the reason I rounded it up to 5 is because I wasn't expecting to have such a thoroughly good time with it. I just really enjoyed myself. I never felt bored. I never felt in want of anything. So I was like, there's no reason not to give this 5, not to round it up to 5 rather than rounding down to 4. Maybe as I continue the series, I'll look back at it and decide to round it back down to 4. But there was just this magic to it that I just really enjoyed, and am probably going to continue to keep at 5. And so I went into The Great Hunt in July. Is that 2 months after May, June, July? Yeah. My brain doesn't really work sometimes. I went into The Great Hunt in July and kind of went into it a little bit tentatively, kind of curious what I was going to get, because based off of my assumptions, or at least some of my little itty-bitty theories that I had for maybe what the book would be about or what the book would do after finishing Eye of the World, people were like, those are some interesting theories. And they were saying it with a, connotation like, you're wrong, but interesting theory. Go into the book and enjoy it regardless. I did go into it expecting the step up that everybody said that it was. It was kind of hard not to have those expectations. Just like, okay, well, I enjoyed the Eye of the World that much. What is the Great Hunt going to do for me? And in a lot of ways, it was, in fact, the step up over the Eye of the World that I was expecting for it to be. But as is the case with the Prophet of Adan versus the Way of Adan, the trilogy, the Adan trilogy by Philip Chase this year, those are the two books that I've read so far. There's a little bit of the magic that I felt in The Way of Adan that I didn't quite get with the Prophet of Adan. I would say it's kind of the same way here, like kind of looking back on it. I don't quite feel the same magic for this book as I do The Eye of the World. If you ask me which of the two at this point I would say is the better book, I would probably say The Great Hunt is the better book, but if you ask me which one I preferred, I would probably say Eye of the World, strangely enough. But yeah, I went into this expecting a step up. It mostly was. Had a larger scale. There's some other stuff going on. A couple more POVs that got to show up, since Eye of the World was nearly all a single POV, beyond a small portion in the middle of the book, a tiny bit of the POV in the very last chapter, and then, of course, the sort of epilogue type thing that went on, and then the prologue. So generally speaking, Eye of the World was one POV, but Great Hunt expanded a little bit, and I enjoyed a lot of it. As in terms of minor gripes, I will say there was two minor POVs. Like each POV maybe showed up 3 times in the book, and one chapter of the book where it was just these 2 POVs I just didn't really like much, and one of the POVs I thought was used really strangely, like his purpose in the book was nearly pointless because of the way that his arc within the book ended, which I thought was weird. And the other POV I just didn't love as a result of that one chapter that I didn't love. But beyond that one chapter and those 2 POVs kind of being, sort of middle of the road for me, I would say the rest of this book was fantastic as well. But then I went into the Dragon Reborn with another set of theories that I got after finishing The Great Hunt, and was actually a little bit more correct on it in some regards. I can't really talk specifics about that because this, sort of wrap up of the 3 books that I'm doing right now is essentially spoiler free. But I did go into the Dragon Reborn expecting something related to the POV allocation that I turned out being right about, that I turned out being correct on, which surprised me, although I was correct for sort of the wrong reasons. But generally speaking, I went into this with that expectation, so the fact that that happened means that I wasn't let down by that, a specific aspect of the POV allocation that some people don't love this book for, that they went into this book and were maybe a little bit disappointed because of that decision. Because I was expecting that decision, it didn't actually affect me, but all the story that actually happened I loved. Beyond the little bit of like, okay, well, I kind of wish that character was in there a little bit more. And aside from Nynaeve tugging her braid like 5 times every 3 pages whenever she was on the page, aside from those 2 minor gripes, I actually don't think I have any memorable gripes about the Dragon Reborn. I just really enjoyed it. And in terms of like a ranking, because I prefer Eye of the World over the Great Hunt, I would say Great Hunt is number 3. Eye of the World is number 2, and Dragon Reborn is my favorite of the first 3. And I think a lot of this comes down to the fact that I just love wrap-ups. I love endings, and these first 3 books could have been reorganized a little bit. Like there are tons of little details that you would have to change, but of the general overall story arcs, there's not a whole lot you would have to change besides like nitty gritty stuff to make this a serviceable trilogy. It wouldn't be like the best trilogy of all time, but it would be a serviceable trilogy that just had like a really loose ending that maybe could be expanded upon, obviously, by, how many more books there are in the series. But generally, the fact that Dragon Reborn kind of had some of those endings in there and could have been restructured in some ways to be like, yeah, this was just a trilogy and that was the end of the trilogy, I would have been perfectly satisfied with that and would have really enjoyed it for that reason. Now I just have a heck of a lot more to go. I finished the Dragon Reborn and it's just like, I'm in it for the long haul. I don't care how the rest of the books go. I enjoyed these 3 books so much. On my Goodreads, they're all rated as 5 stars. And as such, it's like, I'm just going to go into the rest of the series looking up. Basically, I really enjoyed my time with this series, especially, you know, I'm friends with many people on Discord in reading communities, and plenty of those friends are very disparaging of the Wheel of Time. Some of them are convinced that it's like Stockholm syndrome, basically, that by the time you finish the series, you've only done it because of the cost, or the sunk cost fallacy, that, you know, you spent so much time reading the books that you have to finish the series because, you know, otherwise you've wasted all that time reading the other books. But, and, you know, maybe I'll start to feel that a little bit more with some of the books later in the series, like 8, 9, and 10. Those are the ones that I'm a little bit more worried about. But at this point in the series, these first 3, I just really enjoyed myself, and I'm very glad for that fact. But yeah, that is kind of my general spoiler-free thoughts on these first 3 books of the Wheel of Time. I don't think I'm going to go too far into like actual spoilers for the 3 books, because I think I've spent enough time talking spoilers on these 3 books up to this point so far. Back in May, I did 5 Wheel of Time Diaries for Eye of the World covering this book. I did 4 of them for The Great Hunt back in July, and over the 3 previous Thursdays of this month in September, I covered The Dragon Reborn. Now, some of those diaries are better than others, some of those cover more ground than others, some of them are a little bit more like, yeah, this is what I read, I thought it was really good, that's that. But some of them go into, you know, a little bit more detail of what's happening, and kind of like my thoughts and maybe some theories associated with some of that. If you want to see my actual spoiler thoughts on these 3 books, I recommend you actually go check out those previous diaries. But I think for now, this kind of works as a broad general overview of my thoughts of the series. Here in just a few weeks, I think on the 4th, will it be the 4th Tuesday of October? What day is that actually on? So it'll probably be on the 24th or so that I actually have my full review for The Dragon Reborn come out. I do have spoiler-free reviews for the 2 previous books as well, so if you want me to go into slightly more detail on those, even beyond just what I covered in here, you can also check those out if you don't want to watch the spoiler talks. And there's a lot of spoiler talks so far already, and it won't hurt my feelings if you don't want to watch those. But yeah, I've really enjoyed the series so far, and I look forward to getting into the Shadow Rising very soon. I will be starting that. It should be, like, I don't foresee anything changing these plans. I will be starting that in November, but instead of reading that just in November, because it's a really long book, and I have plenty of reading plans to cover over October, that's going to take plenty of time, and I've already spent a lot of time reading in September. I'm not going to commit to reading all of the Shadow Rising in November, and also because of other commitments as well that I can't really talk about at the moment. So for now, it's just the case that November and December will both be covered by the Shadow Rising. I'll have anywhere from, how many Thursdays are there in those 2 months period? There's 5 Thursdays in November, but one of those is on the 2nd, so I probably won't really be able to talk about the book in that video. I mean, I'll probably start it early in that case so that I can talk about it there. So there's 5 Thursdays there, and then 4 Thursdays in December, so there's a potential for up to 9 videos about the Shadow Rising, depending on how I allocate my time and how things go otherwise. So either way, I hope you guys enjoyed this, kind of my general ramblings, a little bit spoiler free, like I said, about this first trilogy, so to speak, of the Wheel of Time. I greatly enjoyed the series, and I hope that anybody else who is, you know, kind of reading the series at the same time as me, or is interested in reading the series, or has read the series recently or doesn't even have to be recently, at any point, if you are interested in my thoughts, I do recommend going and checking out the spoiler talks, essentially my reading diaries on the series, so that you can kind of follow along and maybe have like sort of a buddy read thing going on. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. I'll be back in whatever the next video is. I believe I have a, you know, normal Fortnite on the Isle update coming on Sunday, but next Tuesday will be my reading wrap up and TBR. Those are always fun, so I recommend you check that out. But otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks again for checking this out.